Welcome to CrossTalk with Sara Cross, a place for radio wanderers to learn about the highest laws and other related topics, with the occasional stroll through more relaxed notions. Now here's your host, Sara Cross.
And hey, welcome to Crosstalk, and I'm your host, Sara Cross. And first, of course, as usual, I want to give a big shout out to Revolution Radio. Check out the website, all the great hosts, and if you can throw a few bucks their way, that goes a long way in showing your support to a platform dedicated to free speech. This week, I have the FUNL Conference organizers on, and we are going to be talking about the fourth FUNL Conference that is taking place this month at the end of February. And right now, I have Will Keller and Chris Jansen on with me, and a little bit later, we're going to have Leslie Powers join us. So, as usual, before we get started, please know you can always message me with any ideas or questions you have or topics you would like me to cover. Again, that email is in the chat here for you guys. So if you have, don't be afraid to contact me. Don't be shy. So let's get started and move into today's main topic, the Funnel 4 conference. And I'm going to bring on Chris and Will so they can both introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the Funnel Conference themselves and why they started doing it and why they continue to do it. And here we go. I know if Will and Chris are both there.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having us.
Hi,
Hello,
guys.
hello.
Hi, guys.
Day.
Okay, so we are at the end of the month. You guys have Funnel for Humanity Rising, which is a free online conference. So did you first want to maybe introduce yourselves a little bit and then talk about the conference?
Sure. I'll start. I'm Chris Jansen. And yeah, this will be our fourth Freedom Under Natural Law conference. Will and myself and Leslie have been part of a group that's been meeting almost every week. We've taken some time off here and there. But for ever since the scam started, the big scam back in 20, we all kind of banded together through Facebook of all places. Fakebook is where we met up. And we started having just kind of like I won't get all into that. We're just introducing ourselves, right? I'm Chris Jansen. Check out the End Evil podcast. That's endevil.life and freedomundernaturallaw.com. But Will, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll get more into all that other stuff.
It's kind of an inspiring story, so we'll definitely get back to it. Thanks, Chris. My name's Will Keller. My website is willkeller.com. And presenter, researcher, and conference organizer.
All right, Sarah's still muted, so I'm going to say, yeah, to continue the story a little bit, yeah, we all met on Facebook. And we have a good friend, Cindy, and she was organizing a natural law sort of support group. And that was kind of the birth of just a group meeting. And then after the group had been meeting regularly, we saw the Seed Conference put on by Brandon Martin and Nate Kapp and Douglas Martin. And I was so inspired by that. It was supposed to be an event I was going to attend in person, but all that malarkey that happened in 20 shut down my flight that I had planned. That's the last time I've ever planned on taking a plane. I don't know if I'll ever do it again, but I had the ticket and I spent the money. I was going to go out there, and then all that ridiculousness happened, and they weren't able to do it live, and they did it online. But it was still very inspiring. And then I was like all fired up in our meeting after that. I remember Will, and I was like, man, can we do a conference? And Will's like, I got the technology. And we we started working on it. So yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's great.
I mean, that's how it goes. Sometimes you have to bend a little bit and go with whatever the flow is, where the flow is taking you.
That's right. It was really good timing because we were doing the kind of the support group for a good amount of time, and the after the seed conference went, online and virtual, it was a big motivator. I mean, it was very inspiring. And I've personally, coming from the music industry, I have set up and been involved in organizing in-person conferences, and that's such a huge ordeal. There's a lot of resources financially and just to put something together in person. And it never kind of came across my mind to do, to mimic that digitally online until something like the Seed Conference came, and they knocked it out of the park. It was awesome, and it motivated our whole group.
Yeah. In-person conferences are certainly a lot of work. I feel your pain there. And online conferences are quite a bit of work as well, because you have to coordinate virtually instead of person to person, which is what I was used to doing before that fake pandemic as well. So, I mean, they shut me down too. I had an annual event that was taking place every year, and March of 2020 came around and it was a big old shutdown. So I was like, okay, now what?
Yeah, for sure. Going online though has some pros and cons. I mean, you're more reliant on the technology and the technical aspects. So you have to be a little more diligent in that arena. It allows you to get really creative. Of course, you don't have the actual eye to eye in the flesh, connection that an in-person conference. But our whole goal from the very beginning of the funnel conference was to generate inspiration for people to act on their own accord and get involved.
Yeah, it does broaden the scope a little bit with the internet. The use of the internet allows more people to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And replays and stuff, it's when you put something online, it's being recorded digitally in history, so it will always be up there as long as you have the know-how to keep it up there, and people can kind of tune in at any point in time.
Right.
I think that's a good before we get too deeper, like the context of why we're doing all this. The reason, talk about the trivium. Last year's topic, last year's focus was the trivium, a way of thinking. We got to kind of start with the grammar. And I think it's really important to point out, like, what are we doing? Why is Sarah doing this show? Why do we do the freedom under natural law? Why did we get all fired up in that group? The passion behind all this is that we're all people that went through the whole conspiratorial research, the mysteries of the world research, and at some point came across the work of Mark Passio and looked through his work. I think one of the most best modern works of philosophy out there, because he really brings the streetwise philosophy to what are we supposed to do right now, instead of just, okay, we can point out all these problems in the world. That's what most of these stuff we've all looked at does, and that's not bad, but what do we do with it? When we come to recognize that there's a dark, very small percentage of individual beings on this realm we're in that seem to be enslaving the rest of us with their long, complicated plans and such. What do we do about it? And the real message, the thrust, I think a lot of folks miss from Mark Passio's work, the thrust of what we're supposed to do about it is try to educate other people what we're supposed to do about it. You know what I mean? Not just keep talking about the problem. It's important to understand the problem, but what do we do about it? And that's really the focus of this year's conference, inspiring care to action. We have to care about this problem, and we have to care about what we're going to do about it with the time we got left. Whatever resources each of us, not just us, but you listening, everybody out there, that's the thrust and the message that I feel so passionate about is like, you don't have to change every aspect of your life, and tomorrow, I don't want people to go and storm the government. That's not what I'm saying. I want people to be educated about the core principles of natural law, the inherent objective moral truth that we can all recognize and start to understand on a deep level and teach to our children, teach to our friends and family. That is the core of the message. So I'll start that. I want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, I agree. And I try to tell people this all the time that, when they say nothing and they do nothing about stuff, then nothing actually changes. And I always get the pushback that, oh, well, there's really nothing I can do about it. And they're like, well, there's something you can do about it. You can call people out on their BS, you know. You could you know, teach your kids or give your kids even just avenues to be able to get to where, this information is, give them access to things. I mean, even if there's no real change in our lifetimes, I feel like if what we're doing is to make the change in the next generation's lifetime, then that's, also a goal to work for, because it's very likely we won't see a lot of change in our own lifetimes. So that's what I always kind of think about when I think about change, that things don't just happen instantly. And we're in a modern society where instant gratification is very much the norm. Everybody wants things right now. And sometimes it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, great point. It's interesting. The title of our conference, Freedom Under Natural Law. We're providing the solution and we're proving the solution in the action. So it's twofold. It's the knowledge that you need to know. The answer is right there in the title. For us to achieve freedom, you need to understand and harmonize with the governing dynamics that create freedom. Freedom under natural law. And action is involved. That's how we manifest and create change in the world, is by direct action on the individual level. So, when we first did the first FUNL Conference, it was self-titled, just Freedom Under Natural Law. It was just the people presenting was just in our group. Some of us were very fresh and, have never done a presentation before, or, maybe one or two. So this is not something that's completely foreign. We had to learn the technological aspects. We had to learn how to convey, package, and deliver information. So anyone, in my opinion, anyone can learn this knowledge and learn how to publish and convey the message of freedom.
Yeah.
And again, it just takes care. You have to care first, then act.
That's it. It's a key ingredient. You have to care and you have to just do it or don't do it. There's no trying. There's just doing it or don't doing. And in that little aspect there, sometimes you fail when you do stuff, but you just do it again until you learn. I mean, it's just trial and effort or trial and error sometimes with when you do things like this.
Well, I'm really good at making errors. That's one thing I'm a pro at. But it's actually one thing I learned from Richard Grove, actually, on my days in autonomy, was that he really made a good point that there really are no mistakes for someone who's learning. There's learning opportunities, and he calls it triggering complexity. When you have a lot of complications, and he even sort of shows a process of creating complexity for ourselves to push ourselves to that next level that we need to be at to do the greater things we want to do. So an easy first step in that process for us as a group. It's very hard to have a kind of group, have any cohesiveness in a group. If anyone's ever experienced this, I know there's people out there that just say, like, I don't like people. You know, I get it. I get why people get that way. But it really does take a lot of work to communicate and learn to trust people. And it takes self work, it takes humility. If we're too judgmental of others, then we don't have that ability to sync with people, to synchronize with other beings. You know, it's hard work, especially in a world where we've been so diluted. Our spirituality, our understanding of reality has been so obfuscated and diluted that we can't recognize that there are indeed universal, non-man made, binding, immutable conditions to the reality that we're living in, and that is what we call objective morality. And it's so bad that it's even hard within the group of people that, you know, work within the freedom, you know, and natural law community. They even have trouble struggling with this idea of objective morality. And I've heard a lot of argument in people that I would even call part of our small community, even on objective morality, which basically, from my point of view, is common sense reality. It's recognizing that reality has this intelligence built into it that we call God, or, you know, the universal all, or the great, you know, the great, what do they call the great mother, like the native, some of the native people, you know, like, you know, some, whatever you want to call it, a universal spirit, you know, that there are governing dynamics to this reality we're in. And recognizing that is what we're calling objective morality. And that's like a core concept that most people don't really get deep down, from my experience. So that's what I'm hoping to change. So I'm trying to affect that by finding ways to explain that better and find people, other people that understand that well, and we work together on trying to explain that in such a way that other people can get it. You know, I think that's the key to changing um, the 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 future progression of what's going to keep happening as opposed to what could happen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that fully. I think that I find that, like, even in the truth seeker community, a lot of information gets very, like, there's no bad questions, there's really no failing. It's just like when you fail, or you don't do something fully correctly, that's not like really failing, you know, it's just learning what not to do next time. And I've had to, you know, I used to teach my sewing students that all the time, because that's like a big confidence issue with people. You know, they think they fail once and that's it. You know, they're bad at it forever. But I think in the truth seeker community, it can be kind of an issue where it gets a little bit overcomplicated with details that go outside of, you know, just the basics of morality and ethics. So, you know, that can sometimes make it very difficult for people to communicate and connect.
Yeah, I kind of forgot to bridge. You know, I was realizing, you know, you were talking, your question, your prompt was basically about failures and making mistakes. And I brought it around to natural law. It's what I always do. That's what my brain does, which is good. But
No,
um,
that's fine.
the mistake that I wanted to adhere to say is that, like, a lot of that thinking, a lot of that point of view has to do with exactly what I'm saying. If folks see reality as completely relative and everything is subjective and there's no objectivity to it, then how could we really agree with other people and actually communicate with other people, because we're not even agreeing on the same reality? Or if someone thinks that this whole thing is just a mirage of some sort, what do they call it? Like a video game, they have these theories, right, that reality isn't even real. I mean, if that's what you really think, then there's not, things don't matter. There isn't a right and a wrong. It's just
Yeah.
all sort of a blur, and it could be right or wrong depending on which place you're at and who you're talking to. And so, of course, it's very confusing and scary. And when people try to say, no, it's simple, then they seem like they're trying to fool you or they're lying. I get it, I see where
Mm-hmm.
that could create worlds of mistakes and
Mm-hmm.
frustration with ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see, solipsism and relativism so prominent in the day today, our current age. Yet we we all walk upon the same earth. We see the same sun in the sky. Um, you know, Large groups of people can experience the same weather, and we have all these things that connect us together that we all can experience objectively. Yet when it comes to societal issues or anything that has to do with, the human species, it goes completely based on belief and perception. It's very arrogant, you know, current the current human condition is extremely arrogant and egoic, that we are not connected to nature. We are not connected to this whole, objectively. And there's aspects to come to know. We harmonize with the laws of nature when it comes to aviation. We harmonize with the laws of nature when it comes to electromagnetism, um, combustion, all of these things that we use on a daily basis objectively, that are in harmony with how the non-man-made laws operate. Yet when we apply it to ourselves and behavior and how we create change and how we should operate in the world, it completely goes out of the window. It's full-blown ignorance. And that is ultimate folly in the eyes of nature and creation. And this is why we have the human condition that we have now. And this is also the reason why we do something like the FUNL Conference, to plant those seeds of truth, knowledge, and wisdom, and to create change and action.
Yeah. And I've heard that actually quite surprisingly a lot. I thought that was just almost astonishing that people who were truth seekers, who were looking for actual truth, would just throw out information. And they would do stuff like, oh, because this one institution or this one particular figure in the eye of the public lied about this, or is this kind of like person, that every single thing is a lie, and that this is all some kind of an illusion, and we're like in a, I know some people call it the matrix. I don't like to call reality the matrix because I just, it doesn't sound right to me, because it feels like this isn't a movie. So I don't particularly like that kind of terminology. I think it's too open to interpretation. And then, yeah, people just throwing out information. I've heard people say that they think gravity is fake. So, it is really hard to talk to people and try to connect when you can't even get like just the basics on the same page. That can be difficult. I think that's really something that seriously needs to be changed.
Yeah, I agree with that. When it comes to truth seeking in general, and the community or quote unquote movement, it's mostly excuses and justifications, because I people understand when we talk about objective morality in their heart, in their core. They understand do no harm, don't steal, and but yet the excuses and justifications come out tenfold, and that's because they do not want to accept and act on the actual solution of accountability and responsibility, that we as individuals need to act on our own volition and our free will. That is what scares people. People are, even truth seekers, they are cozy their in their comfort zone, and living that lie of fear on
Mhm.
action itself. I think that's where the problem stems. And, it takes deep internal work to flush that out. And, people turn the cheek to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think people often just stay in their comfort zones, and I think this can be a fear-based response on a large scale.
I love. I always have to. My brain always has to do some kind of metaphor or allegory to describe these situations. I think it's interesting because I've been having some really good conversations with a great friend I've made, and this great friend of mine understands most of the stuff that I would hope that a friend would understand, and yet still disagrees to an extent. And I've had this similar situation before with other people that I've discussed things with, and I think what happens is it's like I'm trying to say basically that government is a form of slavery and it's wrong, right? And the person I'm discussing this with is saying, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but right now the situation in the world is that there's all these messed up people and things are out of control, and without some semblance of, they want to say organization where they usually use the word government, and I'll try to find a way to use a word we can agree on, because to me the definition of government is slavery, literally. But for a lot of people it's not. It just kind of means like a way to organize people, and they're not really seeing that it's inherently evil and wrong, just in the fact that it's coercing people, because they see all these problems in the world where, well, if we weren't coercing people right now in different ways, if we weren't forcing people into prisons, well, they'd all be out here robbing us. And they're afraid of that. And I understand. It's kind of like a practicality argument that I've got a lot over the years from people like, yeah, I know what you're saying in principle, but the practical problem we're dealing with in the world is this, 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 and this. And it's like, what they're saying is true. I understand, because if you were to magically just eliminate all forms of government right in this moment, there'd be some problems all over, man. We're going to have a lot of big problems right now, and would they be worse than the day before or better? It's hard to say.
Yeah.
But that, okay, I'll just stop there and let you guys reply before I go on more, 'cause sometimes I bleed
Yeah.
at the mouth.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, I would say it would be the way it is now. We've got sort of a training wheel slash crutch system holding us up and splitting hairs in a way. But like, I think if, say, even if just America removed all forms of at least big government, what I think would happen with the way the mentality that most Americans function under, I think, is more of a Wild West type of scenario. And yeah, I think it would be kind of wild at first because people are going to have, like, in a situation that might happen, people are going to have to learn real quick how to be armed. And I mean, that's what it was like in our Wild West days where pretty much every single person was armed. And yes, crime happened. And yes, there were villains and crime that happened and atrocities and all sorts of things still happen like what they have today. But, you know, there was less big government involved in people's lives and more even coordination with the regular citizenry and even the local sheriff, where if somebody were to come and violate a right, some criminal or gang member or something, the sheriff would actually just help you gun the gang member down, get rid of the problem right there, and not involve like the big government at all. So that is like part of our history, and I think Australia has a little bit of a small history with that kind of mentality as well, way back. But it's interesting to think if all of a sudden we didn't have government at all, I think there would be a huge learning curve for people, and people would have to learn how to be armed again. I mean, already like 50% at least of America is armed. So that's, I guess, a jumping off point as far as people behaving and learning real quick that you can't violate people's rights or act like a dumb animal and just like do whatever you want. So I don't know. I think about that kind of stuff if we didn't have a big government overrunning everything.
Yeah, those are all good points. And this is why the change must be initiated in the mind.
Yeah.
We don't simply, let's just remove government. I'm all for that. I think, people have this addiction to the belief in human authority where they think that if government was gone tomorrow, oh my gosh, I can't get out of bed. How am I going to get to the store to get food? Like, it's so ridiculous, but yet that's an addict talking,
Yeah.
right? If you take away the dependency, how am I going to function? So that's where the kind of the addiction traits come from. But the change must occur in the mind, meaning we need to have that higher awareness. It's not just, knowing objective morality and knowing rights. You have to live it. You have to be in harmony with your own responsibility and accountability, where you know that only it is your responsibility to defend yourself, right? So you need to take that. I mean, there's no safety in the natural world except what you bring with you. So, and do not initiate harm. So there's these principles that really need to be, that we need to embody as a species, as a people. And the excuses of why, what would happen if government was gone, it would be 10 times better than what is going on right now. I mean, nonstop wars for 100 years, genocide going on, deception, theft. So the excuses that people they always want to know, okay, well, how will it operate? Will it be better than what we have now? Oh, like genocide, murder, theft, coercion, duress, it isn't bad enough. So
Mhm.
it's, and human beings really need to kind of analyze their life on a daily basis and understand that for the average person on a daily basis, they are already engaged in anarchy, in voluntary interaction on their day-to-day functions. There's just this tyrant and this dark element that lurks around the planet, stealing life and violating humans, animals, and the earth. And that definitely needs to be rid of and changed.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. And I know a lot of people bristle when they talk about this or when they hear other people talk about this stuff. But I would maybe suggest people who are listening, do an experiment to see if you can rid yourself of some of the burden. For example, the other day I went for a walk and I left all of my IDs and cell phone and wallet and all the trappings of what I need every day to go out into the world. I left all that crap at home and I went for a walk by myself. And just see if you can manage that. And if you can manage that and like still remain a conscious, clear thinking, orderly adult human being, then, step it up and see how much other addiction kind of elements that are in our world today that keep us trapped in without. Go without ordering from DoorDash or Amazon for a couple of weeks, see what happens. Nothing's going to happen except for you didn't utilize those instant gratification and those comfort elements that are now being sewn into everything. And this is like all of this stuff stems from that we have an overreach of large government, I think, and they're all elements of the same problem, I think. So I'm not saying these things are bad, like DoorDash or Amazon or whatever, but the way people use them is certainly like part of the addiction, I think, and it all stems from being afraid of not having something that allows us to just have like, an instant access to stuff. And like government allows that as well. It's an enabler in a lot of ways for many things.
Our world is everything is back ass words. Everything is twisted. You know, the communities at one time in history, at many times through history, If you can imagine, government is actually an invention. There was a time before there were any governments, and that might have happened in cycles. But there's been times on this earth where people have lived closer to nature in groups of different types and had varying levels of organization of their groups. But in a lot of situations closer to nature, human beings, we have this soft pink skin or this, pretty fragile bodies without fur all over it. And we don't have nails like animals do at the end of our fingers that can claw, our teeth aren't quite, you know what I mean? We kind of need each other in order to survive this wild planet. And there's been a lot of things that have been built to kind of hide and keep that realization of the reality of the scary of being alive, the scariness of being alive, like under wraps. And everything's flipped over because we're living under this idea, this pretense that we're protected and that we're safe and that we have insurance. And all the ways of people's thinking really have been flipped over with years and years of some bad philosophy, some really bad philosophy, and some terrible mind manipulation. And it goes so deep that you mentioned earlier, Sarah, you don't like to call it the Matrix. I agree. When I think of the Matrix, I think of that movie when Neo wakes up, and I talk about this in my presentation because I went through that experience. In order to really recognize and realize the things that we're talking about deep down, it's like the movie They Live. When you really come to recognize that you see everything in the world, you start seeing how backwards everything is. But it's a huge pill to swallow, and many folks think they've already done it. Like this whole idea out there of being woke. And people, I'm awake. I'm awake to what's going on. No, it's another level deer. You can tell a lot of times by the way folks speak, because they're like, oh, we should all do this, or our country should do this. And it's like these patterns of very collectivist thinking, where what we really need to do is kind of like what you're saying, Sarah, like, what am I doing today, right now, with my time and energy? And what can I do to form some sort of relationship with somebody where we can become more powerful in reality? Larkin Rose did a really good job of saying this whole idea is like made up stuff. This whole idea of all this collectivist stuff of we're going to do this and we're going to protect these, it's all made up bullshit. It's not real life. Real life is scary, and you do have to learn how to defend yourself or live with or around people that can help defend you if you're, if you don't have the physical ability to. And so that's just a real reality of the responsibility we have of inhabiting these physical bodies. And all these systems of control are trying to convince people and turn that key to flip everyone's mind to where they don't see that there is a way to change this stuff. But it's not going to happen overnight, and we're not going to just get dropped on Freedom Island, and no one's just going to put a stamp on the world and say, oh, no more government. That's not how it's going to go down. It's not even close to reality. And that's how far off the minds of humans are right now, that they think reality is something where a bunch of people can just make a decision and change reality. No, that's not true.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, good point. Everything has a gradient, right? We learn this from nature. Winter just doesn't go to summer. Summer just doesn't go to winter. There's a gradient. There's a stepwise progression. It's cyclical in nature. And this is, even changing the current human condition will be a stepwise process. There's a quote in the movie The Matrix that I actually disagree with. Morpheus tells Neo that, looking at all the pods, saying that the majority of these people are not ready to be unplugged. I disagree with that. Unplug them all. Unplug them all. That, like what you were saying, Chris, is that we are living in an illusion. It's a complete facade. And that safety blanket needs to be ripped away from people. This is what a real paradigm shift is. That's not to say that people can't handle it. There's going to be a lot of people that can't handle that. People can't handle truth right now when you speak it. If it's on the current conditions of the war, government, the scamdemic, people can't have that. It doesn't matter because wrong is wrong and right is right. That is their responsibility in their journey, in their existence, to handle that, to go through the work. So standing in truth and acting for what is right is a must, is a necessity for evolution.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree with both of everything that you guys said, and I would be of the perspective personally to just rip that Band-Aid off, time to grow up. Um, I think there would be a lot of freak out, it would be like, you know, those poor liberal women shaving their heads over Trump like times 1,000. They would just go absolutely berserk, a lot of people, I think. But at the end of the day, truth is truth, and that's it. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And, sometimes maybe you just gotta put it that way, and people can either grow up and accept it, or they can choose not to, and
Well,
make the decisions they're gonna make.
in an ideal situation and condition is what we're trying to do. People would start to take in the information, they would start to align their behavior, and you would have a gradual increase of awareness of objective morality and natural law. And then you would start to see people start to pull away from these systems. Police and military would quit their cults, and we would see this gradual increase, and it would quickly pick up and snowball as it reverberates. Of course, the social engineers will not allow a gradual transition. So to think that we can come out of this unscathed is naive. Even at the most desperate point of, of the social engineers losing their control, they will throw more and more, friction at the people. That's what they're doing right now because it's a transitional period. There is a heightened awareness in individuals. People are being disillusioned in, traditional government and the medical system and the food industry, all this kind of stuff. So this is why they speed up the false flags, they speed up the conflict, and they get people scattered because people aren't rooted and grounded in truth, in first principles. So even though they have a heightened awareness and an opportunity to learn causal factors and learn the truth, they are being misdirected, and they're having scatterbrained with all these events and focusing on the symptoms and the effects. It's like what David Icke calls the mainstream alternative media. I think the alternative media is absolutely one of the biggest disjustices for our cause, because they keep focusing on the symptoms and they don't have that knowledge of the actual solution of causal factors, of natural law and objective morality. So a sense, by proxy, they are assisting the social engineers' agenda in this, misinformation and keeping people confused and diluted.
Yeah, and you talked about the addiction aspect. That there's a dependence on thinking about me and what I want. Mark really nails down the thing with the Satanism. I've never been part of, the Church of Satanism, and I haven't really been affected by it in my personal life, but understanding his description of what their core principle is really gets to the why of things for me. And that is like when people are working from their own, based on what's best for me personally as the number one prime ideal, that's not living a life of principle. A life of principle is understanding that we're part of our greater community, our family, and the whole world of people, and the future of all people after us. So the things we do and say and act out affect that and matter. And there's a responsibility in that to recognize that I'm a divine individual here who is affecting reality in a very real way by every little thing I do or don't do. And that point of view of that we've discussed is like, well, it could be really bad if we got rid of government, so we shouldn't do it. It's not really based in why. What we're really getting at is a principle. Like the why matters more when it comes to a parent and their child. And a bus is coming, you're going to push the child out in front of the bus, even if it costs your own life, because it's a principle that as a parent, you understand that certain sacrifices need to be made in order for this child to survive. And it's the reality of humanity. Many times in history, humans have had to make certain sacrifices so that others could live on and survive. And that's living a life based on principle. It's not always about, oh, how's it going to work out for me tomorrow and mine, just me and my family. It's about what's best for all. And that's a tricky, we got to walk carefully there too, because we're not trying to say, oh, we need to act as collectivists and make decisions for all, but we need to keep in mind that decisions we make individually affect all, and that's our responsibility.
Yeah, I think people should understand there's a big difference between being part of the human family and helping each other and being part of that and socialism. It's big difference, but it is a fine line. But yeah, I agree with all that. And like, when people talk about like, well, it's, about me and my own, like, and they're really only concerned about their immediate needs right now. I call that the me complex. Because it's difficult for people to like think outside of themselves, especially when they're so overburdened by all the distraction upon distraction from like the news media and social media, filling their heads up full of what's essentially fantasy. So it makes it very difficult for people to communicate even cordially online sometimes. I find that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, communication is deeply tied in with trust. I learned that years ago. I used to do some like teamwork challenge, like the ropes course kind of things and facilitating groups. And one thing I observed over and over in the discussions, because after we would do a ropes course challenge, you'd get the group together, sit in a circle, and have everyone talk about it. And you learn over and over how important it is to build trust. And if you don't build trust, it's really hard to communicate with people. So if we're not on the same page, if we're not agreeing on the same why, and we're just getting stuck on the world of what, we're never going to get to that level of trust where we can actually communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's the unifying factor is objective morality and natural law, because that's first principles. That is the foundation from which everything is built upon. The condition of the interaction between us and other beings. I mean, what's more foundational and fundamental than that? Then people can get into, alternative modalities, decentralization of the financial aspect, or, medical, all that kind of stuff can be built upon those first principles. So, and I agree with you, Chris, communication is tricky. Communication and comprehension. The one conveying the information has to have a profound comprehension of the why, of first principles and those factors, then convey that to the receiver of information so they can have a clear comprehension themselves. So we see, this is why I define words so much. So there's no confusion on what I'm speaking of, and someone can take that in, and we have a clean comprehension. And there's just so much static and noise, out there in the ethernets from alternative media and, other content creators and stuff like that. And that's due to the lack of that unifying factor of first principles.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally with that. So, yeah, I think it does have to start with the self, with the mind and your own heart, and take responsibility for that first, and then then, learn how to conduct yourself accordingly with the world. But fighting amongst each other about little details doesn't get us very far. And I find a lot of people do that too, and it makes it very difficult for them to focus on a main goal, which really I feel should just be like freeing the human race and making sure that rights aren't being violated on a daily basis, which is the norm right now. So I did have a question. I mean, maybe we kind of already answered it a little bit, but one of my questions was, what made you want to actually start or continue to keep doing this work once you started? And we do have a break coming up in a few minutes, so just we can always pick this up after later, like after the break. But just to start off, that would be really one of my main questions. Like, once you get started doing this work, what makes you want to continue it after you start, especially when you've got so much pushback that takes place from the outside world?
Yeah, Sarah, everything ever since I started doing this work, everything it feels like has been pushing to try to tell me give up. It's not worth it. You're not reaching anyone. Uh, it's way too much time and money for what you're getting out of it. Like constantly, these messages are constantly hitting me every week, and I have to keep asking myself, why am I doing this? You know what I mean? And it brings me back to a riddle, and I'm pretty sure this is the same one Mark read on one of his podcasts. I remember I was at the time working for the Superior Court, picking files in a warehouse, and he said this riddle: I soar without wings, I see without eyes, I have traveled the universe to and fro, I have conquered the world, yet I have never been anywhere but home. What am I? And I was thinking, and he might have said a slightly different riddle, but it's the same answer. It's imagination. And I got so
Ooh.
excited when I came to realize that. And I've always loved imagination because really that's what bridges the gap. I was talking earlier about a metaphor. To me, the metaphor is a bridge. Like we're all living on one side of a river, and the rulers, the people that are all holding us enslaved, are saying there's no such thing as bridges. There's no way to cross that river. And some of us are looking over there and we're like, there's all that beautiful land over there of freedom. All we have to do is figure out how to make something way to get across that water. And I imagine a bridge. I really do. I can see it in my mind's eye. And I believe in it with deep passion. And if I didn't have that imagination to recognize a world that's better than the one we're in right now, I would have given up a long time ago. And it continues to hit me every so often, that it seems hopeless. But I do have hope because I have imagination. And that's that divine spark within me that knows that freedom is real and there is a such thing of it, even though we're having a little trouble seeing it right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, great point. In late 2019, Mark Passio was doing his live show, and he was in a fiery rant, very passionate rant, and it kicked me. It gave me the motivation to look in the mirror and finally realize that I have the moral obligation and the duty to do this work. During that point of introspection, I made the choice that this will be a lifelong endeavor for one simple reason, because it's the right thing to do, regardless of who I help, my influence, any kind of change. It's the right thing to do. And that is why I keep doing this work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And guys, we're going to be right back right after the break. Don't go anywhere. See you in a minute.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener supported radio. And now we return you to your host.
All right. Thank you. And welcome back to Crosstalk. And thanks, guys, for sticking around. And we are continuing the topic of talking about this year's FUNL Conference. That's Freedom Under Natural Law. Number 4, Humanity Rising, which is a free online conference. And that is taking place the weekend of February 22nd. And before we move on, I'm just going to throw into the chat here the website where you can all go and find the conference, where you can find all these wonderful people who are part of the conference. And they've got a lot of great stuff and a lot of great information. So go and check it out. That is February 22nd this year. And joining us now, we have Leslie Powers. And I'm going to add her website as well into the chat. So go and check all 3 of those guys out so that you can find out more information and dive more into their work. But for now, let's bring Leslie in and have her introduce herself. And we were just discussing the question about doing this work and getting into it. Once you get into it, why would anybody, or why would you continue doing this work despite the pushback that is received from the outside world? So, Leslie?
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for inviting me. And hi, guys. Really good to join you. Apologize for coming in late, but glad to be here. Yeah. So you want me to jump into that question?
Yeah, let's go for it. I mean, we did a little bit of funnel history in the beginning, so if there's anything you wanted to add to that, you can do that as well.
Yeah, I'll just, in terms of the history, where it's important for me personally is that it was in the first FUNL conference that I did my first formal presentation, Corruption of Care. And so that it marks, I would say, a very pivotal transition point in my life. And it was through meeting this group, the group of people that created FUNL, that I would say was a very huge turning point in my personal growth and in stepping into kind of finding my place, my voice, building the confidence. I wouldn't have had the confidence or the accountability without having this group of people around me, showing up every week and inspiring me to take my thoughts and put them into some kind of a structure or a format, which is also in my Alive and Thriving videos, that represents that, but then also the funnel presentation. And so in terms of why, the meaningful nature of this work and why I keep doing it has a lot to do with a combination of, one, it's the right thing. And the more that I learn and expand my knowledge and deepen my understanding, the more I know it's the right thing. And I know it in my bones. I know it in my soul. I feel an alignment to expressing my voice. It really pushes me to grow into my potential and fulfill aspects of myself as a public speaker, as someone with courage who's willing to stand up for what's right instead of caving into what's comfortable or safe. It's a big challenge, and I think that all of our self-growth really needs challenge. And so doing the right thing and that being incorporated into my life purpose, it's become very much a part of my identity, in a sense of being aligned to myself. Not that I've taken an outside identity and kind of pasted it on my forehead, but more looking inward to feel aligned within myself in the, my thoughts, feelings, and actions. Because when I'm aligned within myself, I'm at much more peace in my life, and life flows smoother. And then the people in my life, add and enhance it, right? Rather than feeling like I'm working against a bunch of people. So it's empowering, it's meaningful, and it's gratifying to be able to even witness my own kind of blossoming as a human. And so I also enjoy the camaraderie and the teamwork and the ever expanding growth, right? At every funnel conference, I learn things and I expand and deepen my understanding of truth, and I value truth. So it all integrates.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. And like, I think that's a good point to bring up too, that this could be like, something that helps the individual kind of blossom, like you said, and builds that strength within them instead of just doing it for the main purpose of, human freedom. Um, it helps us as well, like helps heal some of us as well. And I mean, I think even though I had been studying this stuff for a few years, and then I met you guys online, and then I think really my first internet really putting anything out there was, I think, the art that I put, or the art that was put into the Funnel 2 conference. That might have
Yeah.
been the first online, like real online interaction thing that I did in regards to doing this work. I had no real experience with it. And I found, because I mean, I started like I think what most people start with, like, I don't know what I would even do to contribute because everybody's already saying everything I would already say. And there are people who are so much more skilled than I am in certain things that it would take me several years to learn some of those skills. So I think most people kind of battle with that
Yeah.
specifically. And that's what really kind of stops them from doing much of anything. But I mean, that's kind of where I started. I just like had some artwork in the Funnel 2 conference, which was awesome. And then I just kind of grew from there. And I think that would be a good thing for people to consider, just put things out there,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And I think that people don't recognize the value of their own voice, that insecurity, that programming of not being important enough or good enough is very much a constriction. And when individuals can overcome those constrictions and start to stepping forward with courage into scary places of expression and figuring out what your voice is amidst, the many voices, it's super powerful and meaningful. And I think that all of our voices matter. All of our creative expressions are beneficial to the whole, right? And so the more of us that can really overcome our individual hangups and insecurities and start to figure out what's your role, what do you feel in this realm of truth and freedom that feels most important to you, and you start to just start, like you said, putting stuff out there. It's of dual importance, one for you and one for the world. And I think it connects to the whole principle of, the freedom, the law of freedom, in that it is the synergy of all of our energies that lead to the outcome. And every voice has something unique to offer and will attract a unique listener or viewer.
Yeah.
So it all matters.
Yeah.
And that keeps me going as well, because I believe that deeply.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I always kind of go with people like, oh, how do you like do that? Aren't you afraid of what people think and stuff? And I'm like, no, not particularly. I'm not really afraid of what people think.
Well, that
So,
took me a while to get over, because I had like palpable fear around being embarrassed
yeah.
or saying
Mhm.
something that was not true, and then, being mocked or like called out. And so I had to do some real personal reflection and work to not be so afraid, to not
Yeah.
hide, in my life
Yeah.
anymore.
I agree.
The voice is what's going to get us out of this. That's the main tool for us to use. The voice bridges thought and emotion, and it's also an action as well. So, voice, to speak it, to call upon it, to express. Well, what? Freedom, truth, what is right, what we want. Like, this is how we use the voice. And we have that opportunity in this day and age, because maybe sometime in the future, soon or later, we might not have that opportunity to use our voice on a digital platform, on a large platform as the internet. And it will it'll take us back down to the last resort, obviously, would be the full embodiment of the self-defense principle in arms. So the voice absolutely is the main tool that we need to use. And I'm grateful for the funnel group, meeting, my brothers and sisters that I love, and seeing people activate and use their voice. It's what really keeps me going and inspires my own work.
Yeah.
Yeah, like meeting new people and actually starting to see some people come together, like watching you, Sarah, and your progression, and seeing Leslie and her progression. And there's some other folks out there that have come on my podcast and started doing their own little show or stuff, and have said to me, like, I was really inspired by the FUNL Conference, or, I saw one of your shows, or, like, I think some of the sort of the struggle too with that, the thing we were talking about, that matrix thing where everything's turned backwards. It's like in that fake world of kind of being trapped and not having the solution, and being actually believing that there's no way to cross this river of, into freedom without, this current situation. It really does prevent a person from being able to actually see that we can work together, and we can, and so I feel like this is a tangible, tactical thing, is just speaking into the world truth without fear. And that alone is a spiritual dynamic. And this ultimately is a spiritual, non-physical experience here, even though the physical seems so real. And yes, it is. It's part of the game. It's like very important part of the game. But the deeper layer is that everything in the real world comes from things that we can't see, and those decisions we make and the thoughts we have are forming the future of what people are going to experience. And that's a hard concept, even though it's so simple to explain and describe. And I honestly really keep on trying to do it. And every time I have disagreements with folks, it just gives me more ideas for how to make this point in a better and more simple way, and more elegantly, So thanks for inspiring me back.
Yeah, I mean, I always I kind of have a rule of thumb to watch everything so that I can take it all in and kind of, you know, you know, try to learn and also be on the same page and see how everybody else is working and working together. And it's kind of great to see a lot of different people giving the same message in all their different ways and reaching all different communities. And I think that's something that's really helpful as well. It doesn't all have to be the same group of people that everybody talks to. It can be all different groups of people. So I like that. Yeah, I think, using our ability to voice what we want to say is a very powerful tool, and it should be utilized at all costs, I think. I mean, even when we are shackled, like even if you are physically shackled, you could still use your voice to, say no, to fight back somehow, even if you're at the end and you've lost and it's a lost cause, you still have the power of your voice to say no. And that's still, you know, going all the way to the end with it, sticking to it.
Yeah, I agree, Sarah. It really, and you know, it is something that becomes a calling and a driving force in my life. And while I may need to change the pace of which I work or how I approach this work, I'll always be doing the work in some form. I'm quite confident of that. And there's also, you know, as I've interviewed some folks and I look in my own life, I see that there's a legacy that we're creating. And so whether or not we see good outcomes in our lifetime, I'm thinking forward. You know, I have 3 children. They're going to likely have children. And I care about the trajectory of their lives. And I want to leave a message. I want to leave an example. And an example of courage and an example of doing the right thing. And, you know, they might now kind of not appreciate fully why I'm so busy. But someday I'm confident that they'll be able to look back and see, oh, look, this is what mom was doing. Wow, like this is meaningful. And I look back, I've been doing some of my own kind of ancestral exploration and also looking at the astrology and just really trying to understand myself and what it is that I've sort of inherited. And I've been somewhat inspired by some of the stories I've heard and read, mostly, right, that I've been able to find around my ancestors. And I know that we all have in our history both the oppressor and the oppressed. And I can see people in my lineage who were really trying to do the right thing, that were fighting for freedom, that, you know, in some ways, you know, even if they were misguided and working in a statist role or a military role or a religious persecution, like I have Huguenots, let's say, in my ancestry, and I can see this passion in these people and know that their blood is in me in a sense. You know, I carry that DNA, I carry that epigenetics, and in a sense, I have an obligation, is how I feel, to continue a journey, right? Because people sacrificed a lot and suffered a lot. And if I'm in a position where I can do something to clarify this energy and create some sense of healing or resolution in making all of that sacrifice something valuable and worthwhile, well, I think that's important, that I take that baton and carry it and make our children's lives better, hopefully, or clearer.
Yeah, I agree.
Great point. I want to add to that. That was beautiful, Leslie, and I absolutely agree. Not only is the soul of the collective soul of humanity at stake, whether the species devolves or evolves into the future, or the soul of the planet that we are interconnected with and we can assist its evolution, but our individual souls as well. And that this might sound religious in a way, but this is getting into deep, you know, esoteric spirituality. The only thing we take with us upon death is the condition of morality. Whether the experiences that we gained in this life, is it based on moral right action? That is wisdom, and that's the only thing we take with us, and that we have to reconcile on the other side, you know, in a life review or just in the effect of the cause of our life, is if we were moral and what are the details of that and the condition of morality. in our experience. And that's hard for a lot of people to kind of consider, that not only is it about the whole, it's about the self as well. So the condition of our individual souls are at stake, and that process of individual evolution is on the line, along with collective evolution.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Chris, did you have something you wanted to add to it, or?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was talking about with teamwork, I just can't help but thinking, like, like the description of what I'm imagining is like we're all trapped on one side of a river, right? And there's someone ruling over us, right? And we're all kind of stuck in this illusion. And someone kind of wakes up from the illusion and it's like, you know what? We could all get out of here. I see a way we could get out of here. We could cross this river, you know? If we work together, we could do it, right? And then that person kind of goes around trying to help other people, but the other people are just seeing that person as an irritating, frustrating prisoner who should probably be killed because they don't believe in a such thing as crossing rivers, right? And they don't believe in bridges, and they don't believe in people working together because those things are all impossible. They've known it ever since they were a kid. Deep down, they kind of know that's all wrong, but trying to get to that deep down feeling just feels so scary and untouchable and impossible that people are out there feeling really alone and scared, you know and I feel like what Leslie was saying, like, ever since I got to know Will, I remember I took action. Mark Passio says wisdom is action. I went on, as much as I hated fake book, I went on there and I was like, I bet there's a fake book group about Mark Passio's work. And I started looking it up, and sure enough, there was. I was like, I'm going to find out who's running this group. And I called him, I put a message on that group and I said, hey, if anybody wants to talk to me, I need to talk to you guys, and people did. It's
Yeah.
like as soon as you speak out into the world, to the universe, and to the great creator of all, and say, I really care about this, and I'm going to really sacrifice whatever it takes to get in this direction because that's what I care about, the universe responds.
Yeah, I agree. It always responds. There's always a reply, whether it's a positive or a negative reply. I mean, it's all about how we behave, ultimately. But yeah, I think it's important to understand that this kind of work does require certain type of sacrifice and a certain amount of constitution, I would say, because there can be quite a lot of pushback. There can be quite a lot of difficulty in it. And ultimately, I would say, and this will lead into my next question for you guys, but ultimately, I would say that it's not really about us when we do this kind of work and when we just stand our ground about morality and ethics, and it's about what we bring to our future, because the way I see it, I don't see, we may see some like really good physical realm change, and that would be awesome in our lifetime. But ultimately, when people do this kind of work, it's always about the future, the children that are after us. I mean, like Leslie said, she has 3 kids. I have a daughter as well. She could potentially have children in the future, and I don't want to leave them in this kind of mess that the world is in. So, and I mean, I get that as well. All the kind of grief that you guys experience, I've gotten a bit of that as well. And, it's kind of terrible. Like, it's disheartening. It's kind of like beating you down a little bit. And people will ostracize you a little bit for it because you're telling them things that they don't want to hear. And it's really too bad, but you just keep going on. So, my next question is, besides freedom, obviously, and obtaining that kind of condition, what are some of the practical goals you're looking to achieve by doing this work? Like specifically, like, specific messages or specific achievements you would like to at least come to at least before the end of this particular life?
Great question. And yes, I agree with you, Sarah. It's another main reason why I do this work, not only just because it's the right thing to do, but I'm a father of a young lady. So what kind of man would I be? What kind of father would I be if I didn't try to create change in the world, positive change, and be that example for my daughter? So, and a little snippet of my my upcoming funnel presentation titled Symbiosis. I have a section where I talk about 7 generations. This is a Native American concept in the Lakota, Dakota, Navajo. Many of the tribes and the indigenous peoples of America hold this 7 generations, meaning that when it comes to big decisions in the tribe, in the community, they always apply the 7 generations factor. How is this going to influence up to 7 generations in the future? And I think that's a fantastic state of mind to be in, not only as an individual, but as a community, as humanity itself. So some of the smaller aspects of my messaging that I hope to kind of convey in my work is obviously, conscious parenting, getting parents to understand that there are objective principles that must be taught and must be learned and embodied in the journey of parenting itself. And that we need to influence our children and teach our children these objective principles for the continuation of the 7 generations, right? Objective morality, natural law, the trivium, critical thinking, those kind of overarching topics. And also another main one is animism itself, demystifying what animism is and how that state of mind and that worldview can really aid in the interconnectedness and the accountability of an individual, and our relationship with the land, with the earth, plants, animals, each other, truth, freedom. Like that's all encompassing in the worldview and the state of mind of what animism is. So those are kind of the subcategories that I focus on. But the 7 generations, absolutely, it's about the future of humanity, the future of our children, because we're going to be back here, so we're going to be those future children as well, and there has to be some kind of positive change left to our children and grandchildren and the continuation of the species.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, they're, leading by example, setting that example for our children. And like, I like that 7 generations thing, forethought, having forethought, um, just before we move on to Chris or Leslie real quick, I mean, like the setting the example, even when the fake pandemic started, I went into all the information about like hand sanitizer, about how you shouldn't be using a ton of it, don't use too much of it, and masks, don't wear any masks, figure out excuses. And she was clever. She figured it out. She got away with it. Even though I couldn't be there like the whole time. So, I mean, yeah, showing that example, and forethought with the work and just being there, being present with your work, living up to what you actually say online, I think that's great.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that question about
Mhm.
specifics. Sarah. It is a really good question. And it brings us back to, like what keeps us going and how we want to guide our own individual work, So on a couple of levels, I want to be somewhat of an inspiration. I would like for people who hear my voice or see me to feel inspired to look at themselves and to grow and to see possibilities that they might not have seen before, both in their own personal growth and trajectory, but also how they can influence others. I hope that people start to question things, that they start to question their automatic beliefs and worldviews and start to consider another possibility for themselves, their own lives, and the future of humans in general, right? To just be able to start to inspire imagination about something that is better and that is obtainable if enough of us, can just start like dominoes, like touch the next person that touches the next person to start questioning and being inspired. And because it's in this this process of more and more people questioning and seeing possibilities that we can gain a collective strength. So every little thing matters, it adds up, right? And so I also have, my 3 kids, and my oldest is 25, my youngest is 16, and they're going to likely have kids. And I have an opportunity really to, excuse me, to have an influence on them, on their thinking, just for them to start to question the status quo and think outside the box. And they themselves have a leadership potential. And I get to, have a connection with grandchildren, which is I'm assuming that I will, and that is now holding a whole new meaning of importance, for me. And it's inspiring me to maybe share more on a local level as well. And so I'm being called to be a part of providing some more specific services to women and create some women's circles where women can do their healing in a safe context and explore their relationships in their lives, both the relationship with themselves, with other people, with nature, and really thinking about the difference between what is natural and what is artificial, what is unnatural, and how do we relate to these things? How have our past relationships created a present situation? What do we like about it? What do we not like about it? How can we shift our relationships in our life to create a freer and more whole, healthy, integrated life where, we can step more freely into full expression, ultimately. So that's, I am, a psychotherapist, clinical social worker, and I work with people individually a lot. And I do find value and purpose in that. But I think bringing the natural law context more directly into that work and bringing in some more group community type of circles, that's my next step.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, like paying it forward, showing people their spark so that they can maybe try to enact on that stuff themselves. I like that. I agree. Chris, do you have an idea?
Oh, I got loads of ideas. My brain's wild with ideas. It's just constantly getting excited about the next idea. But I guess I got short-term and long-term goals. My short-term goal regarding the great work and my podcast has been to be consistent and to keep showing up and to be patient, and I'd like to continue that short term. But long term, I really would like to see natural law become something that is more like a school. I'd like to be part of leaving what you guys are talking about, what I call legacy. the legacy I would like to leave is that the next guy who comes along like me, who's young and has a curiosity in philosophy, that there are legitimate schools that person can go to and start training how to become a free individual in this world. And I think we all have to start figuring out how to provide that. So personally, my kind of like little bit longer goals for the next year or two with the work I do online is I want to start teaching what I've learned about self-defense. I want to teach what I've learned about how to create content and how to access the creative spark within us. And so, I hope that I can inspire people is really what I want to do for the rest of my life, because that makes me feel good. So yeah, pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, that's great. I think, yeah, and using these skills too, and this message and the goals to like also apply something that's practical in the physical world, not just the spiritual gain that you get from it. I think that helps cushion the transition too for people to start to come into it and realize the truth, because then they can see it, in a real world way. And I think that they can build up to really opening up more to more of these concepts with like natural law and stuff. So I think that can help too, just with practical real world use that people can really relate to, and grow from there. So, I mean, yeah, like my main goal has always been, because I kind of always feel like there's not a lot I could contribute outside of what a lot of people have already said. But really, then when I started to think about it, I started to realize that if I can get at least some people who, I've been the circles that I'm primarily in, to just understand the concept of thought, emotion, and action, and learn how to use that in their everyday practical life, then that could be a stepping stone into graduating into more of the other like all the other information, once they kind of get that in order for themselves. So I don't know if that helps at all, but I feel like it's like a, baby step into the right direction.
Yeah, I see it as planting seeds. We may not
Hmm.
see the full growth of the seeds we plant, but there is in understanding natural law and the universal and inevitable principle of cause and effect, right? And how that plays out. It gives me confidence that if I plant a good seed, and do what is within my power to affect the conditions that that seed is growing in, then there's going to be growth, a good plant that comes out of the earth, and
Hmm.
so the other thought that's been coming up as we're talking is this idea of the spiritual and the material being one and the same ultimately, and that spiritual doesn't just mean that we're off in our head, but it means embodying principles in our body. That the spiritual goal is grounding really in the physical world, because this is an expression of spirit ultimately in a different density. And so what Will was saying about really what we carry with us is based on our morality, and that affects our physical material experience. And if that message can become clear, I think that will help people to understand, the streetwise spirituality, that Mark Passio has brought, this idea of real self-defense being a spiritual principle, because it's different than how we've been taught generally. And I think there's pushback on that idea. Maybe one of you could share a little more on that.
Yeah, I agree, Leslie.
That's a very good, aspect of animism right there, what you were saying, Leslie. And it's a needed unveiling that has to happen with, it's like a mental infection that the majority of people have, where there's just separation and they don't understand energy and how we interact on a daily basis with our surroundings, whether it be, even the trees, the microbiome in the soil, each other. All this kind of stuff is interconnected, and what we do matters. It has an influence on not only our surroundings, but the whole itself, the totality. So, unveiling and deconditioning all of these mind viruses is extremely important. I think demystifying and correcting what animism is, that, it's not a primitive worldview that indigenous people have held for thousands and millennia. It is the default worldview and mental operating system of human beings, and how we can understand that the animation of the earth, the animation of all life around us, is a factor in our relationship and how we operate. Spirit and matter are one. They operate together as one system. So it gets really deep for a lot of people, especially rooted in the left brain, materialistic and analytical minds of people. But this is the task that we are here to do. This is the one great work. It's shredding down these layers of deception and setting the record straight in alignment with truth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything you guys are talking about. I had one last question, and I think it's a pretty easy question for most of us to answer. And we go through it really quick. What is the main audience you are looking to speak to, as in, because of the specific goals you have in mind and the focus of the aspect of this work that you really put more of your focus into? What would be your main audience that you are looking to speak to? I know for myself, just because I mainly focus on, trying to just, show people about thought, emotion, action, my main audience would kind of try to be everybody, even though I know that's not totally practical. So based off of the main focuses of the aspects of this work that you do, who would be the main audience you would really like to be speaking to?
I've always thought about it like an avatar. Gentleman I used to follow quite a bit, Nathan Frazier, did some good work on trying to explain how to go about that, in terms of getting our message out to people. Who are we trying to get it to? That's a really important aspect when you're creating a podcast, that I was taught early on. So I kind of drew an avatar of my younger self. I thought of myself back in the day when I didn't understand a lot of these things, and I think to myself, if I could do a time machine and I could go back to Chris at 20 years old and just kind of slap him around a little bit, like, dude, this is what you need to know. How would I do that? Slapping him around wouldn't work. I'd have to appeal to his interest, and so I try to reach people that already have a curiosity, that are already questioning things, and either in the world of mystery or conspiracy. And going forward, I'm going to focus more on people that are ready for practical life decisions that will aid them, either helping them do content like I do, or helping them learn how to defend their physical body. Seem like pretty good things I can aid people in, which so that I'm going to, or in their mental and spiritual journey, and recognizing these things, I'm willing to help with that too. So I think those are my practical. Yeah.
Awesome.
For me, so I have the Dissolving the Divide podcast that I do with Derek, and I think that for us on that, which it's a very meaningful project to me, I'm very appreciative of being a part of, we're really reaching out to anyone who is starting to wake up to the problems in the world and seeking truth and looking for solutions looking for a paradigm that's outside of the traditional kind of left-right, dynamic of, only two options, or we just have to do what the Matrix is guiding us to do. People who are really seeking different way and care about learning about esoteric knowledge and personal growth. So that's a more generic community. And then more specifically in my work, really wanting to reach women who have been struggling in relationships and recognizing their own pattern in dysfunctional, relationship history, maybe have lost their own self-trust or clarity about who they are and where they are going. And so I'm seeking, to offer a supportive environment for women who want to grow themselves and their own confidence and self-trust, that seek support in a sisterhood to explore themselves and their own patterns honestly, so that they can become more aligned in their own life.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. That's so awesome. And we got a few more minutes too. We probably got about 8 minutes or so, 7 minutes or so. So I want to hear from Will as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think it's important to kind of know your demographic, and for anyone that's going to or is starting, who your audience is, who your demographic is. You're going to have to figure that out, right? Starting is the key, and once you start putting information and content out there, you have to be able to kind of read the ethers and see which direction you can go. And I think that changes as we go on in our process of evolution. My demographic is parents. When I started doing conscious parenting presentations, I got a huge response. So I took that as a sign to focus my content there. But also I try to simplify these profound topics. And the majority of my work is for, I would say, just really average people that don't have an extensive understanding, but are kind of questioning and need that first level framework and not necessarily a diluted, but a condensed or a simple explanation of what is going on. So that's kind of my demographic, and that can change in the future. It's good to kind of have that awareness of just where the attention and the awareness is kind of gathered, and pursue that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really love everything that you guys have said. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this whole subject. And I think it's a great, little, little sneak peek to the upcoming Funnel 4 conference and what you're going to find there when you check it out on February 22nd, or the weekend of. So if you guys wanted to just plug your sites real quick, and if you wanted to just give the dates and the website of the Funnel 2 conference and talk about like all the days and information you want to add with that would be great.
So Chris, you want to jump in and close it out on the funnel?
Yeah. We're trying to keep the website updated. Check out freedomundernaturallaw.com. If you haven't yet, you can sign up on there. We're going to just start sending out a couple emails to keep people updated. We're going to have some new posters coming out and such to let people know. The lineup we haven't completely figured out. I think we only have so many completed presentations in yet. Everybody's working hard and getting them done now. So everybody's in the crunch time. So it's going to be streamed online, and we've always streamed to multiple platforms, so it should be pretty easy to watch. There's going to be a few of us probably bouncing that stream around. I would say just, keep an eye. There's a Telegram chat you can connect to from the freedomundernaturallaw.com website. And there is a donation link on freedomundernaturallaw.com. This has all been volunteer work. We put in our own free time to do this. So any kind of donations we get are going to get put towards the cause. We're probably not going to go out and have a party for ourselves. We're going to keep working on this stuff because we care about it, like we said. So the donations are much appreciated, but more importantly, share this stuff. If you see the posters, copy them, put them on all your platforms, and let people know this thing's happening, because it's the main goal is to reach people with this info.
Yeah. So go and check out the website, guys. You're gonna be able to find everywhere where it's being put out there, so don't miss it. And Will?
Yeah, and I wanted to say thank you, Sarah, for having us on, and also your participation in the FUNL Conference. So the whole theme is Humanity Rising, Inspiring Care to Action. We've had really good success in the past funnels, and I'm really excited for this conference as well. And like Chris said, you can donate, or at least at minimum share the conference when it's live, share the flyers. This is all grassroots, and we appreciate all the support.
Yeah, totally. And again, it's all volunteer work. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about everybody's presentation, and I'm excited to see my own presentation up and displayed in such a national or international way. It'll be quite exciting. You find once you get into this kind of work, you really start doing stuff, you get all pumped up about it. And it sounds crazy, but it really is true. So yeah, definitely, guys, go and check out that website. You're gonna find all your information, and find the Telegram, find their Facebook. You can hook up with all of them through Facebook as well. Did you guys want to go around and plug your personal sites real quick?
I'll share. My website is alivethrive.life. I'm also on the One Great Work Network. And my presentation, which I'll just briefly share, is called The Power of Music, Bridging Matter and Spirit. And as I'm always coming from a kind of therapeutic mindset, it will talk about the incredible therapeutic power of music and really get to kind of what we're made of. And how music can be take a role, how we can use music consciously to help heal ourselves from trauma and process emotion and a lot more. So I just really encourage people to tune in.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. willkeller.com. You can get to all of my presentations, podcasts, the One Great Work Network profile. And I'm just want to say I'm super grateful for Leslie and Chris. Chris has taken the lead on this conference. He's doing a fantastic job, and it's just it's a really great experience. So thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Chris, you want to plug real quick?
Sure. Endevil.life, freedomundernaturallaw.com. You can also check out chrisjansen.com. But
nice.
Have a good one. Thanks for having us, Sarah. Much appreciated. Love what you're doing.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on CrossTalk. And thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.